Welcome back to our Autoline Live webcast, coming to you from the floor of the Washington D.C. Auto Show. And joining me right now is Daniel Weiss from the Center for American Progress. And great having you here.
Thanks for having me, John.
You know, one of the things that everyone in town here has been talking about is the President's State of the Union address 2 nights ago. And one of the things he set out was a goal to have 1 million electric cars on the road by 2015. Can we do it?
I think that's ambitious but doable goal. We've already got 10,000 plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. The Chevy Volt are supposed to be on the road this year. GM says it's going to make another 40,000 for this year, and they're going to increase their order for next year to over 100,000 vehicles. The Nissan Leaf should be coming on the road sometime this year, so I think we're on our way.
But can GM, I know they say that they want to greatly increase production, but you know, I got to believe one of the reasons that they set the production goal, original production goal, is, you know, they've talked with their suppliers, especially those providing the battery cells, and figured out this is all we can make. So that seems awfully ambitious, not on the part just of the President, but even of General Motors to say we're going to boost production so much.
Well, I'm no expert in the auto industry, but I bet part of the reason for the low initial production run was they weren't sure about the demand. And with the rise in oil prices, oil could be as high as $100 a barrel this summer. Gasoline will be $3.25, $3.50 a gallon. I think demand for the Volt is going to increase. So I think that's probably as much to do with it as the suppliers. In addition, because of the investments we've made in the last couple of years, we are now growing our own American high-tech battery industry that will be able to supply up to half the batteries for these cars, which wouldn't have been true 2 years ago.
When you look at sales of hybrids, they're a little over 2% of the market. You know, what kind of an omen is that for electric cars, where, you know, one vehicle has sold extremely well, the Toyota Prius, but the rest of them really haven't caught on that much. So what does that hold for EVs?
Well, as with any new technology, there's going to be a slow startup time. But remember, a Prius, you know, maybe gets 10 to 20% more fuel economy than an ordinary car of the same size. But some of the drivers of the Volts now are reporting getting 175 miles per gallon. That's a huge difference. And as oil prices continue to rise and gasoline prices continue to rise, I think they're going to find a much bigger market for this car than the Prius, than they found for the Prius, because the marginal difference of fuel economy is so great.
But the only problem, of course, is that the Volt works great. The Nissan Leaf, which I've driven extensively, works great. But boy, if you can only plug into a 110 outlet, it takes forever with the Leaf. It's 20 hours to recharge. The Volt less so, because it has a smaller battery pack. I had them in cold weather too, and the range fell dramatically.
Of the Leaf or of the Volt?
The Volt. I saw a 40% drop off in the electric range, even when it's fully charged. I knew that cold weather would affect batteries. I'm talking cold weather, in this case, in my example, it was 23 degrees Fahrenheit outside, and we saw a 40% drop. So then you really want a 210 volt charging capability. That's about $2,000 more to put in your garage, and you really should have a garage too. What I'm getting at is, seems to me that electric cars really will only make sense for a fairly small slice of the car buying public.
We have to remember, 20% of the cars that we sell in this country approximately are in California. That's a pretty large market. They're not going to have the cold weather problems. Second, as the technology advances, as the battery advances, I'm sure they're going to address that problem. Third, the President announced during the State of the Union that we're going to invest in the infrastructure to provide more charging options than just charging it at your home. Ideally, if you park your car in a parking garage, you'd be able to recharge it there. So we need to get that infrastructure built. Remember, this technology, the plug-in hybrid, is in its infancy. These are the first cars on the road, and you know, it's biggest car of the year from Car and Driver magazine. That's no small accomplishment.
Yeah, well, and I'm on the North American Car of the Year jury, so we gave it to the Volt as well. So,
do you get a free sample?
No, I get to test drive them, which is
not quite the same.
Not quite the same, but it is pretty good. Let's go back to the infrastructure that you're talking about. The President is saying we've got to invest in. Others are saying not only that, but we've got to lift the cap, as it were, on incentives for electric cars. There's a $7,500 tax credit right now. After you sell your first 200,000 EVs as an automaker, boom, you're capped There's legislation being introduced, I believe, by Sander Levin
right,
in the
Carl
House
Levin,
from Michigan to say, no, let's raise that to 500,000. What I'm getting at is, at the same time we're talking about the country's broke, we got to cut spending, so do you realistically think that the country is going to make these kind of expenditures?
Well, you know, it depends on what's important to the members of Congress. One of the things that's important to note about the Volt and other either all-electric or plug-in hybrids is they don't use oil, or they don't use nearly as much oil. And that's important because 1 out of every 5 barrels of oil used in this country comes from nations that the State Department calls, quote, dangerous and or unstable, unquote. That's a huge benefit that benefits all Americans, whether you drive a Volt or not. So it's important to remember that we're backing out a commodity that exposes our national security to risk. And so that's what I would argue to those who wonder. Second, the amount of the investment is relatively small compared to things in the budget. You're not going to balance the budget or not balance the budget based on this. And so, you know, the House Republican Study Committee just proposed getting rid of high-speed rail investments, getting rid of other advanced auto research. Frankly, I think that's being very short-sighted because we have a national security imperative to reduce our oil use, and this might be worth funding to help accomplish that goal.
As you know, we're awash in natural gas right now.
Right.
Production in this country has exploded in the last few years. What's your outlook for natural gas in terms of getting off imported oil?
Well, you know, that's a great question. Center for American Progress has been a long-time supporter of the Nat Gas Act, which would create incentives to convert medium and heavy-duty trucks and buses from diesel to natural gas. In fact, we estimate you could save over 1 million barrels a day if that of oil.
Which is significant.
Which is significant. That's 5% of our oil use if you made that conversion. So we believe there ought to be incentives to both make that conversion and to help create the infrastructure for the refueling of natural gas vehicles. I don't think natural gas really works for passenger vehicles because then you need a whole new infrastructure delivery system. But it works for heavy buses and heavy trucks, and also works for centrally fueled vehicles. In fact, AT&T, I believe, just bought or agreed to buy 10,000 natural gas vehicles from Ford.
What about for electrical production? Does it make sense to use natural gas?
Yes, natural gas is anywhere from 30 to 50% cleaner than coal. And that it doesn't have, when it comes to carbon pollution, it doesn't have mercury pollution, doesn't have soot pollution, which costs thousands of premature deaths a year. So it's got a lot of advantages. And now that we've got all these natural gas, shale gas plays all across the country that have yet to be developed, we have a real source of the fuel that's domestic. We have to develop this fuel, however, in a way that doesn't pollute the water, add more global warming pollution to the air, or poison people nearby.
And that's a good point, which is where I was going next. As you know, we've had a breakthrough in how to extract gas from what they call fracking, and but there's also controversy about it because they pump water in that some allege can contaminate the groundwater. Where's the Center for American Progress come down on fracking?
We believe that there ought to be a regime to make sure that this gas can be produced safely, and we believe it can. Some states, like Colorado, already have rules to do so. In addition, we want to make sure that those that are producing the gas capture the methane that would otherwise be released in the air, because we don't want to make global warming worse by getting a fuel that makes global warming better. So that we have the technology to do so. What we need to do is make sure that the companies do so, and that will take some sort of standard set, probably by the federal government, because some states will have good standards like Colorado. Other states, like, for example, New York, have no standards right now. Although, in fairness, New York is trying to figure out what to do about its shale gas.
As you know, coal is very abundant in this country. It's a whole lot cheaper than just about anything else out there. You see coal making any, staying around or going away?
Well, President Obama in the State of the Union said by 2035, we want to have 80% renewable or low pollution energy. So coal can stick around if we develop and commercialize carbon capture and storage technology that will take the carbon out of the air that's produced by burning the coal and store it underground. This technology is in its infancy. If we can develop it and commercialize it, then coal has a future. If we can't, then the future for coal is much more limited. In addition, coal has all kinds of other health impacts. In fact, National Academy of Sciences did a study last year that found that burning coal and fossil fuels costs our economy $120 billion a year due to premature deaths and other healthcare costs. So not only is it bad for the environment, it's bad for our pocketbook right now.
Well, good. With that, we're going to have to wrap it up. But Dan Weiss, thanks so much for stopping by
me, John.
and talking with us. Yeah,
Thanks.
great having you here
Thanks.
again.
AutoLine Live from the Washington, D.C. Auto Show is brought to you by our Inner Circle sponsor, Bosch, invented for life, and also by Dow Automotive Systems, innovations for clean powertrain solutions, and by the Steel Market Development Institute, automotive steel technologies powered by strength, fueled by innovation.